All right, we're back. We're back, everybody, for the good old-fashioned Andor Season 2 review. This time, instead of the Sword of the Jedi, we actually brought on somebody who actually has not been on this podcast. So, yeah, give it up to the B-Dog.
What's up, guys?
So we brought in a grand Jedi Knight master, if you will, to further this conversation. But I actually have something at the top of the show that I want to ask for my big question of the week. It's something that's been going on the past, I guess, week and a half. But can 100 Jedi beat one gorilla out using the Force or a lightsaber?
Well, the Force does enhance your strength and speed.
But you can't use the Force.
Oh, no, you're not using the Force. Oh, wait, technically you are. Oh, dang. So if you're just regular and you find you cooked.
I think once they see Yoda get his head bit off, I think the Jedi are cooked. All right, so with that, I'm Demetrius.
And I'm Demetrius.
And Meet presents
Blur City Podcast.
All right, so this is our second season 2 Andor review. So we're doing weekly chapter reviews. So they seem to be releasing in batches, 3 episodes each, up to ultimately having 12 episodes. So we're going to be a few this week, next week, and then the following week to wrap up the Andor Season 2. Also, I guess the Andor season finale as it leads into Rogue One. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to have our official return on the podcast for the Thunderbolts sometime this week once we get our recording situated. And then we're eventually going to get into mid-season and finale of The Last of Us Season 2 recap. All right, so with that, we will lead into the pulse of the people. So this is just the general feel about the show from the populace. So what have y'all been hearing so far?
At least for me, right? The people are they still loving the show. They still loving it. They still they peeping game. They locked in, and yeah, like people again, they really like these batches of episodes. So yeah, and also just FYI, we are recording this on May the 4th be with you. So yes, national holiday, perfect occasion to talk about Star Wars show.
Yes, Brandon, how have you been hearing anything from like people regarding the show?
Most of what I've heard online, I've heard a lot of positive about this show. Just like the level of detail and just the intertwining storylines, and just how exciting how everything's kind of building up to like these bigger plot threads. I've heard a little bit of controversy about how serious and how heavy some of the subject matter is, and I think that turns some people off. But overall, I've heard really great things. I've personally been really enjoying this show a lot.
Beautiful. All right, so we're gonna jump into the recap of it. Again, these recaps for our episode televisions are relatively shorter compared to when we do our movie reviews. So we're gonna get high level with it. So Meech, if you could start us off with, have you ever been to Gorman?
All right, so have you ever been to Gorman? It actually jumps 1 year after the episode 3, so it's in 3 BBY, so 3 years before Rogue One, 3 years before episode 4. So that's the time place. Firstly, it starts off with Biggs having a straight up nightmare, and Cassian is like, hey, chill out. Yeah, just chill out for a little bit, and it turns out they're both in a safe house, in a shelter, if you will, like one of Luthen's safe houses on Coruscant. And then right afterwards we go to Gorman, where Cyril Karn, he's the head of the bureau in Gorman, and he's talking with his mama, and she seemed to be on a little bit on the up and up, but apparently she's saying a lot of things right now, like why are you getting sent to Gorman, to this nasty place where these people, they talking trash about our emperor, and because I get this on Fox News. Oh wait, sorry, I mean the Imperial News. My bad, wrong. I forgot where I was for 2 seconds. And also it seems like, oh yeah, why'd you leave Dedra? She seemed like a really wonderful girl, and you had like the real life. And he's like, man, nah, this ain't no demotion, this a promotion. What you mean? I'm out of here. And And yeah, and turns out he was being bugged by the Gorman rebels, the Gorman front, if you will. And yeah, so he's basically it's like, all right, now that I'm getting some of those people together, yeah, it's time for me to move on to plan B. And then it turns out, like, as Karn was walking home, he was approached by a couple of these rebels who invite him out to a underground rally, if you will.
A meeting.
Yeah. They say it's a meeting, and it turns out it's just an underground. It's an underground PTA meeting. I ain't gonna lie to you. That was straight.
Dude, I want to touch on it once we get to the final episode about this Gorman Rebels.
Man. All right. And then with Cassian and Biggs, they're basically just trying to figure out like, hey, what to do. They going around, hoods up. They trying to hide. They trying to like live life together. Yes, because they are in a relationship, fully confirmed. And he's just pretty much worried about her and her mental state. And she's just like, hey, I'm good. Like I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm just ready to get active. I'm just trying like, hey, have my face out here rather than hiding. He's like, no, that ain't the best move. And then she's trying to hide details from Luthen about their encounter and the loss of our boy. Next thing you know, next thing you know, you have the meet. Oh, you have the Daedra board meeting with the ISB, where we get into some very real life shenanigans where they're discussing like, hey, what's some problems here with the people? Like, we got raids, we got like a bunch of arrests, so many people, like so many potential rebels who we've gotten a hold of, and it's like, bruh. And then old boy who's Lonnie, that's his name. Yeah, Lonnie, who, if you remember, is Luthen's mole in the ISB. He's like, hey, we got way too many people.
Yeah, it's like oversaturated.
Yeah, we arresting and deporting way too many people. Oh, wait, sorry, not deport. My bad. Again, I forgot where I was for 2 seconds. Yeah, we got way too many people in camps. In prison. And yeah, we just can't handle that amount. And that seemed to resonate with a couple of people. Also, turns out that Cyril and Daedra, they didn't seemingly break up.
So we see in like the first 3 episodes, the Imperials were like, hey, we're going to do a smear PR campaign with that. And Daedra's like, okay, we also have to like get some bad rebels to do some stuff. So that way we can have like really escalate the situation and to improve the Imperials. So like also in the background of this, we have what is it called, the Gorman Massacre? I'm not sure because I heard it's the canon of it. Yeah.
The Gorman Massacre was like, I think originally it was Tarkin landing a ship on a bunch of protesters. And I think they've included that in the show, but then they're expanding it into something like even bigger to kind of spur on the rebellion, which is pretty dope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I like kind of how it overlays where it's like kind of the hush-hush thing where you don't talk about it, but we also see like a lot of the working is kind of they're building a mural. Well, they already built the mural there. And then there's also fear that the ISB, the Imperials, are building an armory where it's like you're not supposed to have essentially an army, a war situation on this peaceful planet. So that's kind of just like overlaying in the background. And then we also get our guy, Saw Gerrera, pop up on the car, and he's trying to get Rhydonium. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
So that was interesting. And like also swaying this new guy, Wilmon. So I think that's the initial setup for it. And then we get into episode 4, I Have Friends Everywhere. If y'all have any thoughts before we jump into that.
No, I think the only last thing is the fact that like, hey, Andor is basically about to leave out, and like, oh yeah, because he gets assigned by Luthen to go to Gorman.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while you have Bix who gets like some drugs, I guess, to help with the nightmares.
So then with I Have Friends Everywhere, we again, as you mentioned, Meech, we have Andor getting his new title, Varen Sky. We kind of see like how he gets integrated. Code word being "I have friends everywhere." So as soon as he like lands on the planet, this is really interesting. This episode, which is why I kind of want to touch on the rebels, where he lands, he's like kind of waiting, and then instantly one of the Gorman rebels like goes up to him and he's like, "Hey, if I wasn't who you thought I was, this whole operation would be like spent. All y'all would be gone." So with the rebels, I think it's really interesting because what they kind of remind me of, and as we go through like these next two episodes, is that they're less quote unquote a rebel army and more like kind of like back in the Cold War era where it's like people would have the communist meetings and then they would be like kind of on the blacklist. That's kind of like the intellectual, oh, we get all these scholars together, kind of like Oppenheimer, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And less like, oh, we're rebels. And then as we go through the course of the episode, we see Andor being like, yo, these people are not ready to handle this.
Oh yeah, Brandon, got any thoughts?
Yeah, I really like how just as soon as Andor gets there, he's just kind of assessing the situation and just immediately saying like, yeah, you guys aren't ready. Like when he first meets the the agent from the Gorman front, he's immediately just schools on like, hey, like you just approached me. There was no like code words, no nothing. You just came up to me and assumed like, hey, like I'm your guy. I could be a double agent. I could be a spy. And we just kind of see that throughout. Like he's just like really seeing all the faults, and he's kind of getting a bigger picture. Because then later we find out that they kind of let him know, oh, they have a mole, an imperial mole, feeding them information, and he immediately like just throws up red flags. Like, how do you legit, right? Like, how do you know this is really what it looks like, and you guys aren't just being played for some other nefarious purpose?
Which we see that they are with like double agent Cyril.
Yeah.
And then like even go ahead, Meech.
I would say triple agent Cyril.
I mean, he's actually getting played as well as Cyril himself, because we see that Partagaz gives Dedra a warning where it's like you're walking a very fine line, and we already saw in the previous like episode 1 where it was like they can't tell anybody what the end game of Gorman is.
Yeah, there's so many layers behind that, and just like I don't know, it really makes you kind of like think in the back of your head, wow, do conspiracies like this really exist? And like how far do they go?
It's deep.
Yeah. It's like the layers of propaganda and planning and manipulating. It's mind-boggling.
And a question I have for this episode, because I'm not sure how to read it, with his office being bugged, did the ISB send that on purpose to get him closer to the Gorman front, or was that just like a random search and they kind of like against him? I'm not sure how to read that.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It could be either.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be to where like, oh yeah, they do that in order to like get Cyril so upset, or at least like have him feign being so upset that like, oh yeah, the Gorman front's like, oh yeah, he's our guy. He and he locked in with us. Or just straight up was an accident and Cyril just played that card to perfection.
It's funny because like with his personality, you don't know if he's acting or if he's like legitimately like acting in that way, since he's like, oh, this is my, like we saw that Cyril, once he gets power, he's kind of like, oh, I'm the big man on campus now, and he always gets shut down, which is the funny part. So I was really confused about that part. But even as you mentioned, Meech, this helps him go to the meeting again, and then he meets Carl Rylands, who is a very wealthy man on Gorman.
Absolutely, and he just like, because he was able to slip them some information, if you will, about like a certain transport. A certain like military transport and like what's going on there. And then from there, we we got a transition to like what our boy Will and Saw Gerrera are doing, where he's still trying to get the device the Rhydonium, get that method ready. And also like teaching the other engineer like how to do it, mostly because of the fact like he being forced to against his will, against his willman. I'm not sorry, but yeah, and then it gets to the point where it's like, hey, let it in, boy. And whew. Oh wait, is it this episode where old boy gets
Well,
shot?
it's like right at the end, but we also have the part where the dude that Willman was teaching turns out to be a traitor for Saw Gerrera. Well, turned out to be a traitor against Saw.
Yes, he was. And then bro got capped, and oh, this was like right before he actually endorses Will to Saw Gerrera. It's like, hey, like, listen, I kind of know what to do, but I have so many other responsibilities that it's like that if you want this to work, you gonna need him because
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it all by myself. Like I got way too much stress on my brain. I wonder why. And then boom. Also, do you think maybe he couldn't have been a traitor?
Well, I think the thing that kind of like led him to like the signal to him being a traitor was kind of like, hey, body, where we're going to hit for the Rhydonium until the day of or like the moment of. And then we see in that scene where he, like you mentioned me, she's like, yo, I got to remember all these like 8 combinations. And if I mess up any of them, we die. And with that, he asked like Saw, hey, you got to tell me where we're going. So I think for Saw, that was like, nope, I know you're a traitor. Kind of with that read of it.
Hmm. Very, very, very big read, but as I said, like it could have also gone the other way because he was just genuinely concerned and it's like, oh, not because you know
Yeah.
Saw Gerrera crazy.
Yeah, we see more confirmation he is off his rocker.
He is the most paranoid.
Oh yeah. And then also we get some more Luthen and Clea shenanigans in this episode where it turns out that Davos scolding, he turns out that one of his pieces was a fake. So he is so incensed by it that he said, okay, everything I got, we need to get it reappraised ASAP. ASAP Rocky. And then that leads to some tension between Luthen and Claire because they're like, hey, Luthen's like, hey, it was your idea to go bug Scolding's like his art. It was your idea. So what if you gonna do to get it out?
I think it's, yeah, go ahead.
I really like that argument because it shows like how much work that Luthen and Clea have done putting together these different rebel cells, and they've gotten to the point where they're so overwhelmed unless the one thing goes wrong, and now just everybody's freaking out and they have no idea what they're going to do, and it's one little thing that they thought might be helpful, but now it was a mistake, and just like, what are we going to do? And just like how overwhelmed they must be because she's literally running this underground rebel organization from like an antique shop, which is crazy.
And then it's also multi-galaxy. So like with most of the kind of like rebel things that you see in TV shows and the movies, it's like, hey, it's like one country and you just have to like multiple parts of the country and regions, you have to bring them together. But with, Star Wars, it's like, oh, the entire galaxy, we have to, and the rebels and the different planets with that. And it's really interesting because even Luthen, you see him cracking where it's like in episode 4 where he's talking to Lonnie, is like, hey, it's been 3 months since you talked to me. I need more information. And then Lonnie's like, yo, I didn't have anything until now. I just know about Gorman now. And he's like, we got to get more. And then even with the argument of Clea, where it's just like, yo, all we're getting is like little snippets. I need something big at the moment. So you just see him drowning. And that even brings up like the speech in season 1 where he's like, I am not going to see the victory that I'm fighting for. So I have to accomplish as much as I can now, which it's really compelling. Luthen is such a compelling character.
Absolutely. He's starting to become like one of the most compelling characters, especially as like, hey, it's hard for me to keep my story straight anymore. I'm like, it's like, how many lies do you have you told to where you have so many different varying stories, and now you can no longer tell like, all right, which one's real and which one's not. I'm like, bro, I don't know if I could do that.
And even like bleeding into to the episode 6 with that, like we see him clashing with Andor about when Andor comes back to the Port Steerguard, and they're like, hey, they're trying to rob this this weapons transport. They're not good for it. I can't do this. And then he's also like, hey, you also went to go talk to Bix. And he's like, so that you see them clashing about that. And then you see him kind of just like when he visits in episode 5 with Bix, where it's like, oh, you're a drug addict. Interesting. It's not going to help you. And then we also see with Luthen where later on where we reintroduce what is it, Vel and
Vel
Yeah, Bell and Cinta. Yeah.
Cinta, and how he kind of kept them apart. So we see him keeping couples apart, which we could talk about a little bit later.
Ooh, yeah, we do. And then also we also got to remember what the Mon Mothma storyline is, because she still has a
Yes.
bit of a big part, like in the politics of the Empire, where it's shown that like, hey, many people are now like steering away from her policies, and there's like a certain line that is like, hey, are we? It's like we're protecting against like criminals, and when I was like, hey, are we protecting against criminals or creating them? Which is like really big, because like when a fascist regime is taking over, it's causing people to speak out, and they creating the very monsters that they fear.
Yes, he's trying to get the PORD bill passed.
Yes. So and almost no one is endorsing her with that, which is crazy. But yeah, let's move on to episode 6. Yeah, let's move on to episode 6, where
What a festive evening.
what a festive evening indeed, because good heavens, so much happened. All right. So let's start with the gallery, if you will. Yeah. In the gallery, actually Mon Mothma and her husband, they show up first. No, they're in there, and you have Luthen and Clea, they pop up in there because they know like, hey, after this party, that's when Skolden's about to go interrogate all the pieces, and we need to go and get our listening device out of there before things get messy.
Yes.
And of course, like while at this party, Clea, she runs into good old Lonnie and basically strong arms him against his will to like, hey, you help me get this thing, boy. Like,
Yeah, that was basically what she said.
I'm like, okay, that's boss energy. That's boss energy. Okay, we with it. And of course, like in there, like in the room with all the pieces, you have a entire like Mon Mothma and like Luthen and everybody else, like they in the back, while Clea and Lonnie, they're trying to get the thing out of the piece, which is turning into a big giant task in of itself. Lonnie basically being the body blocker. But
Yes.
who else happens to be at this party and looking at the pieces? None other than our good old director Krennic. And he's just like, well, that tension just rose up by a good bit, because if he sees something, y'all cooked.
Yo, him and Mon Mothma like having that quiet argument was so tense, because you're literally like, hey Mon, chill out, please. This man might wild out, but at the same time you're like, yo, she's right in her case. So I don't know if you had thoughts about this kind of like heated thing, Brandon.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to, I guess, what they're going for, like the politics of Star Wars, because I don't remember who first brings up the topic, but I think it was like a genocide basically. And, Krennic is all very kind of dismissive about it. Like, yeah, these were rebels and they were just a hateful, spiteful people and blah, blah, blah. And, they basically had what was coming for them. And Mon Mothma is rightly like fighting that and debating that, in her own way. It's very kind of reserved, but it's very tense at the same time, because you see these two like very different ideologies clashing. And you really just get this sense of, Krennic has this kind of like almost twirling mustache, very uptight British accent, but then you just get this whole other coat of slime. I'm like, oh, you're just here casually like murdering people who are in your way. And it's like, oh man. And just the tension in that argument and how it just parallels the tension of listening device, even the point of like, I think her hand starts bleeding at one point.
Yes.
And it was, I think of these last 3 episodes, that was one of my favorite scenes, because the tension was just on point.
I was afraid it was going to be like the first Spider-Man movie, like when he cuts his hand and then he goes in for Thanksgiving, and then not Otto. When Norman sees Norman sees him bleeding, is like, yo, why are you bleeding? What's going on? And then he kind of makes the connection that, oh, that's a Green Goblin. So I was afraid because that was like a clean white room. So her like blood dripping on the ground would have been like, oh, what's going on? But luckily they got away with it. So definitely Clea pulled through with that. And then we get to the part we gotta talk about these Gorman rebels. So this is the heist episode, and then this is kind of what I'm talking about, where they're more of a group of free thinkers than revolutionaries, but it's just that they've been pushed to the point continuously, and we don't know what happened over the past year. That's going to be one of my big questions of the week, just like the show format. But with that, we see that they're kind of like on the brink of like, hey, we have to do something or else. And then also, you know, the Sentinel reunion where I should have seen the red flag. I kind of was just like, you know, happily riding along, but I missed it. This was one of the few times I missed the red flag.
I don't know how you missed it. It was like clear as day with me, especially when they rekindled that romance and they were talking like, yeah, like I miss you. I'm like, which one of y'all about to go?
Well, the thing is because well, we have to get to it to say why we were talking about red flags, but with that, just kind of like Cinta and Vel are organizing the heist, and they're like, hey, if you got a problem with what we saying, you're not coming along. You can stay here.
The door right there.
This ain't a conversation. I really loved how Vel was like, hey, you stop talking. Shut up. like I'm not
one guy who kept trying to talk. Yeah, Sam, that was his name.
She's like, I'm not playing with you. You either agree with what I'm doing or you don't come. It's like there's no conversation. So one of the key things that she said, nobody except Cinta and Vel bring blasters. Which leads into kind of just the heist. But with that, we kind of see also Deidre and Cyril, and then Partagaz all kind of like spying on the heist because the heist is a setup. I don't know ultimately what that's going to lead into, but we see that's a setup. We see it's going successfully, rather smoothly. Kind of some inconsistencies. We see one person, there's this old lady, of course, there's always an old lady trying to get home, and then she, like, one of the, not guards, but one of the Gorman rebels is like, hey, let me take you home, grandma. And then we see the guy from episode 4 of this batch, where, like, the big, gruffy, do the roar guy.
Very impassioned.
Yes, so he's like, hey, what's going on here? You know, investigating. And then, so... was it Sam that had the blaster?
Yes, it was Sam.
So he brushed past him because, like, hey, man, you a boy to me. This grown man business, let me investigate. So brushes past him. Sam's like, hey, I got the Thule Uli on me. And then he pulls it out and it's like, hey, is that a plaything? Because if you're going to pull it out, you better use it. And so then they wrestle and then, boom, blasts go off. And I'm like, that's never good. When the gunshot just randomly fires, and I thought it was going to be like a random person that got shot, like one of the rebels, maybe like one of the innocent people, which kind of like would have helped the Imperials, because that'd have been like, hey, these rebels are like terrorists, not rebels, like they're not helping your cause, they're lawless. But we see Cinta is GG'd.
R.I.P. She gone. And this leads to perhaps one of the biggest, like one of the best grief/stricken speeches where old Sammy, like as soon as he realized he killed one of their own, he just folds. He's collapsed. Like he out here in the back crying, back of the truck crying. And she's like, look at me. You crying? Boys, you crying right now? Nah, because this is on you. You disobeyed orders, you took her life, and this is going to be something. Don't you dare cry, because you'll be making up for this for the rest of your life. I'm like, oh. And you could tell, like, she was holding back the tears because, again, that's her lover. So...
and even before then, they had to like be like, hey, Vel, you got to get up. We got to go. With that, we like the time, the signal, we hear the cops essentially coming with that. So it's like Vel was trying her best not to break down. And then she had to kind of like swallow back to, hey, I'm a rebel. We got to complete the mission with that, which was a really tough scene. So I don't know how you felt about that, Brandon, but I was really mad because I would have took Sam out on the spot. He would have been on the ground. Like we not taking him with us.
Oh, that's her speech to Sam was just absolutely heart-wrenching. You know, because you can see like the guilt on his face, like as she's making him like, hey, look at me, look over here, you got to face this. Like this is that boy's like first kill, and it was it was just such a
Innocent person.
yeah, innocent person, one of his comrades, and oh man, just like the grief in her voice, but then at the same time, just like the experience and just like the fury of, hey, this is gonna stick with you like for the rest of your life. This is part of you now. Like you're in this. There's no escaping this. I think she says it's like skin or something. Like it's just something that's always with you. Um, yeah, no, that was, oh man, that was just heart wrenching and chilling and just all it just hits you in the feels 110%.
Yeah, they be cooking off the speeches in Andor. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Maybe
All
top
right.
10.
So, kind of with that, we see that the mission is quote unquote successful. I mean, they got what?
It's a
Yeah,
success for the rebels, and it's a success for Daedra.
yeah. So again, we're kind of on the fence of like what's actually happening here. So, kind of just like fast forwarding. Essentially, Bix she gets her get back on Dr. Gorst, traps him in the device that he was using, and then her and Andor blow up the device. And you see it kind of like since they were both struggling separately, now they're together, and then kind of united. And okay, what are we going to do next? This kind of leads to Jamie's question from last week of like, hey, they're together now. Most likely, we're going to get another year jump in episodes 7 through 9 with that. And we know that in Andor, well, not Andor, in Rogue One, we don't see Biggs at all. So this is going to be interesting. Anything else from this trio of episodes before we move forward?
Yeah, I think these were like, some very solid episodes. I really do like how, again, like you see how close Cass and Biggs are to where they can accomplish a lot together.
Mm-hmm.
So to see that she ain't even in Rogue One, I'm just seeing the giant red flag alert.
It also because of what the fight that he had with Luthen, where it might be a Luthen related death for Biggs. So
Yeah, because we know he's capable of something like that at this point.
Yeah, and he did warn us like, hey, get your drug addicted girlfriend under control. I'm like, hey, yo, chill.
Yeah. Well, and we see him in season 1. He sacrifices, I think it's like a squad of like 30 men or something, just to keep the ISB off their trail. So yeah, there's a lot of heartlessness there.
The hard calls. All right, so with that, we can get into our MVP or op of the week. Meech, who do you have?
All right, so for my op of the week, it goes to none other than Sam. The man clearly does not know how to take orders, or he does not know when to take instructions. Every order that Bell basically gave, he defied, and that led to Cinta's death, to a named character dying. So yeah, he definitely was the biggest op, and I wouldn't be surprised if either A, he makes more mistakes, or maybe this would be like his
I feel like it's his redemption thing, where it's like, oh, now I'm be one of the head rebels because I learned from that mistake.
He could, or he doubles down, but I don't know. He might.
All right, for my op, it's incompetence, so it's just going to go with Sam because the Gormans were not listening on the Gorman front. But for my MVP, I got to give it to Clea. She came in clutch with removing the listening device, because if she did not take that out, they were in a lot of trouble, and just like the struggle that she had to do with it, being crafty with it, because she was like, hey, Lonnie, if you weren't here, I was still gonna get this device out. It was only a matter of how. So she's definitely my MVP of the week. Brandon?
Yeah, Clea is also my MVP, and I really love how she just took charge of like that whole situation. Like I remember watching season 1, and we see her here and there, and I was like, wait, Clea, like Leia, is this? Am I seeing the same person? Am I seeing different people? Like, who is this? and like we're like past that. Okay, this is a separate person, but I just see so much of that like same just like leadership, like no nonsense, like, hey, I'm taking charge. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna beat the Empire kind of thing. And she's just a really cool character. Honestly, I hope that. Well, I guess this is kind of like my big question we'll get to later, but yeah, just seeing like what her future is going to be in the rebellion. Yeah, she's definitely MVP of the week for me.
Well, I like that you said that because we are on our big questions of the week. So, Michi, you have any thoughts on his question?
Oh, I was gonna let Brandon.
Well, related to like the Clea question, yeah, that he just asked.
Oh yeah, so basically, in regards to, again, we do not see Clea at all during any of the original trilogy. Does that mean she's definitively dead? No. But does that mean she's definitively alive? No. This is a Schrodinger's Clea situation. And when it comes to that, right, I think a big question slash big idea, at least getting from these episodes, is at what point does the Gorman rebel plan for through Daedra and Cyril start slowly going awry from being a group of bad rebels ready to do the bad thing to a bunch of good, competent rebels that's actually causing more problems.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And yeah, go ahead, Brennan.
Yeah, I really wonder, like, just kind of thinking about that, like the escalation, right? Like, is Luthen going to? Because even Luthen says at one point, like, okay, if their world burns, it's going to burn brightly. That's going to like inspire other people. So, is he going to like double down on that and then start just like feeding them weapons and supplies and getting them stuff they need to actually start like fighting back and give the Empire just enough of an excuse to come in and do even more damage?
Mm-hmm. And so my big question of the week, because I kind of want to touch on that part with my predictions, but my big question of the week, something that I've heard, it was related to the Pulse of the People, so I just kind of wanted to save it now, is that do y'all think that the 3 episode batches is a good way to like, I don't know how to say this, to like kind of release the show compared to 1 episode a week like it used to be? Because I feel like, especially since they're definitely like they're skipping years, it's kind of hard to sit in grief because like with the Brazos stuff, that was the end of episode 3. And then in this leading into 4, it's like a year later. And it's like, oh, I guess we're good. We had that, 2 minutes of, well, they didn't even really have time to grieve Brazos because Andor, they had to get off planet. He was like, hey, he didn't make it. Let's just be quiet and we got to dip. And then with this one, with Cinta dying, we're probably going to skip another year. So it's kind of like, to your point, Meech, Sam's going to be completely different. Vale might be colder, but we didn't see her process of grief. We just might be seeing end results. So that's kind of my question of like, are the batches, and in terms of building up tension, because everything is like its own arc, which concludes at the end of the 3rd episode.
And then we also forgot how Will basically became radicalized by Saw Gerrera at the end. Mm-hmm. So questions can be made like, hey, like what happens when he meets the rest of the crew again? Like what happens when he meets like Cassian and Bix again, and he completely different. He out here wilding. Yeah,
because even Saul was like, "Hey, I knew you worked with Luthen from the start." And clearly, that's why he knew that. Based on that, so that was just my question of like, it's not that the show is bad or like the episodes are dropping. It's just kind of like the fact that they're releasing, like we're having to binge in such a way for this is just kind of like my question for it.
Yeah, I do wish that we had more time, like in the single years, like with these characters, because they're doing such a good job, like telling this story, and even though it almost feels like they're releasing like a movie a week, and then we get like these 3 hours of this kind of like snippet of what's going on. But even with that, like the impact of like seeing what's happening to these characters, what they're going through is still so significant. It just makes me wish we had just more time with them. I think is maybe the only thing I would change about this show if I could.
There. All right, Mitch, anything else?
I think I think we are good. I think we're good. Like that was pretty much like my main things as far as like the episode structure and like how it's been released. I think it's been like very interesting how they've been going about it. Uh I know like all right, if they're going to be doing this like this, so next week would probably be what if it's trying to like lead all the way up to Rogue One, yeah, this will be in 2 BBY, and then the next one would have to be in 1 BBY if to lead right into Rogue One, which is set in 0.
Yeah. The reason I asked that is kind of like with the Game of Thrones final season, where they were like, usually it was like 10 episodes a season. And then they were like, hey, let's make it 6, but every episode is going to be a movie. And then by the time we get to the end of it, it's like, oh man, this was so rushed. And it's like, why did you do it like that? So,
Yeah. Hopefully, like again, like the pacing of everything just doesn't suffer as we're doing it. And also, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but each episode like was made by the same person, but these next batches is being directed by a different person, and then the final 3 episodes are done by a different person.
Interesting. Which makes sense why, because we see all of them ending like essentially an arc while progressing the story forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for my predictions for next week and then kind of the big picture view, moving on to the next segment, is that I think if we're going to keep doing a year, we're going to see the Gorman rebels as true rebels now. I think we're going to see them more efficient, more militarized. If Vel is still there, they're going to be kind of close to as self-sufficient as possible. And just with that, we kind of have to see what the role of the ISB and then Partagaz is playing on the planet. So I think that by the end of episode 9, a new Gorman massacre has to occur.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see that. I know, like for me, one big thing is that yeah, as we're moving further along, you also gotta see like, hey, what's gonna happen to Vale? You feel like what happens to her, what happens to Biggs, what happens to Luthen, and what happens to Will.
I think the deaths pick up these next 2 chapters.
Yeah. I have a bad feeling that we may see Bix's death sooner rather than later. Just I mean, she kind of had like a comeback at the very end of these 3 episodes, but we're also seeing like her become increasingly more unstable too. So I feel like there's like growing tension there, and that may not end well for Bix and Cassian. Sadly.
And then I have a question. It's not like relative like big question of the week, but just for my memory, is Rogue One the first time the Death Star is used?
Yes, because it's basically finished.
Okay.
But it's of course being like off the books. It's off the books. That never happened. It was a mining disaster.
So I wonder when like the first, like if we'll see like episode 12 in the final release of these, if like we see like an image of the Death Star actually being completed, since it leads directly into Rogue One.
It could.
All right. So anything else, fellas?
I think I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Beautiful, beautiful. So with that, housekeeping again, we're doing weekly recaps of Andor season 2. So next week we will be having episodes 9 through 12, chapter 3, not 9 through 12. Where are we at? 7 through 9?
7 through 9, sir.
7 through 9, chapter 3 of Andor,
sir.
Which I guess is the penultimate chapter of this. Again, mid-season and finale recap of The Last of Us season 2. That's going to be a wild one. And then also we are coming back with the Thunderbolts at some point this week to have that review drop. So let's do our plugs and get up out of here.
All right. So we have our Instagram, formerly known as Twitter and Threads, BlurredCity22. Like, comment, subscribe, stay up to date on all notifications. We have our we also have our YouTube and our Patreon, Blurred City Pod. Goodness gracious, you know what to do. If you want to donate some cheddar, get access to very exclusive episodes never before seen. We also have our email address, blurredcity22@gmail.com. If you want to submit episode suggestions, your reactions to Andor or other shows alike, or your favorite movie, go ahead, send that over to us. We may do a review on them. And then we also have our Discord linked in the Instagram page. Finally, I'm the Jedi born on Mustafar on Instagram as well as TikTok. However long we got TikTok left, because they be trying. So what y'all got?
All right, for my individual author basis, we have my Instagram at Mitri_Dash, and with my X/Twitter, that is at TheMadDash16. And if you're interested in my book, Phantom Reckoning, that is available on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble. Brandon, do you have anything?
No, I'm just lurking in the background.
Perfect. So with that, we always let our guests give the people some words of encouragement. So with that, can you give our people what they need?
Sure. I think sometimes life has you down, but resilience is all about getting back up and trying again. And you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So, keep your heads up, keep trying out there.
Beautiful. And as we always say, it's not goodbye forever. It's just goodbye for now. And that's the Florida City Podcast.
See y'all later.